This week I want to talk a little bit more about how to connect the dots. So last week we talked about what Splunk is, but this week I really wanted to focus more on just kind of connecting how Splunk links, different applications together. So before I get into all that, this is not a promotion for Splunk. I don't work for Splunk or anything like that, but I am a Splunk engineer, so I am going to be talking a lot about Splunk. So we're going to talk today about connecting the dots. So connecting the dots. All right, hopefully my handwriting is not too horrible for you all. Okay. And then I'm also going to take this off so it doesn't make too much noise for you guys in the background. All right, so, okay. All right, so last week we talked about what Splunk is, what it does, and how it can bring a bunch of data together and you can kind of make sense of that data. So we're going to talk about different sort of roles in the tech space and how they can use Splunk, just to kind of like bridge a little bit. So we'll talk about a network engineer. And then next week, we're going to talk about a IAM engineer, which is going to be when Tunde joins us. And then we're going to talk about a software developer. We'll talk about a product owner or / project manager. And I guess I can add one at the top up here for cybersecurity. There's a whole bunch of other roles within the tech space, but we'll just focus on these for right now just because that's all I'm thinking about right now, right? So from a cybersecurity perspective, cyber engineers work with a ton of tools. So you have your agent-based tools that sit on the endpoints, so your EDR tools. So you have your EDR tools. So think about like the CrowdStrikes and the other agent-based tools, Carbon Black, things like that actually sit on the endpoints themselves. So like your laptops and stuff like that, you'll have specific agents deployed to them, Tanium, things like that. So they'll work with a bunch of tools. So EDR will do also SIM. What else? They'll work with some web-related tools. And then, of course, they'll deal with firewalls, IDS, intrusion detection, IPS, and a bunch of other stuff. All right, so we'll just list that for right now. Your network engineers will talk about their switches, so rerouting data where it needs to go. We'll talk about firewalls and routers, which can generally fall into this because next gen stuff, right? And there's a few other stuff that network engineers deal with. Your identity access management folks, we'll talk about your IDM providers, identity providers. So when we think about this space, I'll see mostly like SAML, right? So SAML-based tools is what I think about. There's a lot more, but I'm just thinking SAML. So these are like the single sign-on stuff. So if you sign into one application, you sign into basically a whole bunch of other applications. Software developers, think about front end, back end, and then that can encompass like different types of frameworks for those who are familiar with that, Django, React, things like that. Doesn't really matter, and then also different stacks if you are familiar with like salt stacks and things like that. And then product owners think about like CRM tools. And then we'll put like Salesforce. What else? I'm gonna put it there. I don't really work with product owners as much. Let's just say like Jira, right? So Jira as well. And then we'll say ServiceNow. And there's probably a few other things that they have there. So all of these, appliances slash applications slash frameworks, all of these things log and produce logs somehow. So all of these things can spit into Splunk. So then what Splunk can do is just do a nice little picture of, hey, I see all of this data. I'm going to generate a nice, pretty picture and dashboard that tells you about what's going on in all of these systems. So I mentioned in this episode that when I was in Africa, they wanted me to build sort of like a single pane of glass, which is what a lot of companies want you to build, which basically says, hey, we have a whole bunch of products that are logging and doing a whole bunch of stuff. We want you to build a single pane that tells me in our dashboard what exactly is going on from end to end for a specific user, specific service account, specific system, asset, whatever it is. Tell me end to end what happened and paint me a nice little story. So Splunk can do all that. They have this thing called correlation rules, which you can basically just say, hey, if you see this thing here, make sure that you can correlate that with whatever it looks like over here, over here, over here, over here, over here. Tell me what that story is and paint it for me. So let's say, for an example, a user hacks into, let's say, company Walmart. User hacks into a Walmart. And you can see they hack somebody's random, we'll put email here as well. They hack into somebody's email. Well, first they hack into somebody's computer. And then the way they hacked into that person's computer was they used an email. So that email, phishing, whatever it is, whaling, whatever it is you want to think about. That person clicks a link. That link then executes a script that's embedded within a macro or whatever, and then it does some crazy stuff. So that crazy stuff ends up corrupting that person's computer. So then that person's computer now is infected, and then they basically get their credentials, hacked. And then that credential, they use that same credential to log into whatever other systems that person has access to. Let's say this person's an admin. So if this person's an admin and he's a cybersecurity, let's not use cybersecurity. He's a person that works for Walmart and he's an admin of whatever it is. That person has other accounts that could be related to any of these products that one of these teams manages. That same person can be tracked in different ways in different applications or appliances across any of these different things here that are managed by these teams. Splunk can track all of that for you in a nice little painted picture, just as long as you know what you're looking for. And then there's this whole thing called SIM compliance and all that jazz that says, hey, make sure that this matches what I'm looking for across the board. If it's a person, make sure if their account name is, we'll say SAR, uppercase SAR, it needs to match the same thing that I see in the email, Outlook, whatever it is email that they use. It needs to match in the same sort of front-end application that they're using, whether it's some custom application built by your internal developers or if it's an application you guys bought from some company that your developers are now managing and customizing it for your own. Similarly, if that person's identity is the same identity that's shared across multiple different apps and appliances or whatever it is to log in, we can track that and we can create a dashboard for that. So from a cybersecurity perspective, that makes complete sense for you, right? From a network engineer perspective, let's say, for instance, You have people who are trying to log in remotely into the network. You work for, we said Walmart, so we'll stick to Walmart. So you work for Walmart. There are people who work remote, but they're trying to log in to Walmart's VPN because they're working remote so that they can be able to do their work. If for some reason everybody that's based in New England can't log in for whatever reason, or even in Atlanta, they can't log in, they can use Splunk to track where that issue is. They can say, okay, we have people that are complaining that can log in from all over the United States, but they're remote. But their VPN is assigned to a specific region, city, whatever it is, however you guys have created your policies, they're assigned to this specific policy group here, and they can log in. So Splunk can easily tell you, Nick, Jordan, Sar, Tierra, James, whoever it is, are the ones that are affected, and they're affected based on a specific policy. So then Splunk can quickly diagnose all that for you and then send an alert, report, or a nice little pretty dashboard that your network engineers can go to and say, okay, oh, this makes sense. Now we can troubleshoot where the issue is. It wasn't necessarily that the firewall policy was wrong. It was the firewall policy wasn't necessarily applied. Or somebody made a boo-boo when they did patching or whatever it is, and then they changed some of the policies that we applied the day before. So that's one way Splunk can do that from a network side. There's a whole bunch of other use cases that you can think about. Similarly, from a IAM standpoint, so identity access management, which basically is like the bread and butter of how you manage somebody's account in an environment. So if somebody's supposed to have access to like their email, they're supposed to have access to like maybe some softwares that is managed, externally or even internally, all of those things. Typically, you want to have a single identity that you can tie people to. You don't want SAR, uppercase SAR, to be able to access an application, with uppercase SAR, the name, but then accesses email with lowercase SAR, and that identity traverses in different ways and different like passwords and all that now need to be managed differently and things like that. You want it to be the same sort of like password that can be used across the board, and it can be managed in a single place. Now you think, okay, well, if they hack one password, they hack everything. There are other ways to kind of like, protect that. I'm not going to get into the weeds of that because that's what Tunde is going to be talking about. But from a making sure things are standardized across the board and making sure that you are able to troubleshoot much faster and that work gets done a lot easier, SAML typically is the way to go. And then there's other things within IAM as well that is a lot more involved. But Splunk can diagnose all those things for you and then be able to tell you where the gaps are and where the issues are fairly quickly. And I mentioned Splunk, but these tools also have like their own internal logging as well. The beauty of Splunk is that it aggregates all this information for you in a nice little pretty picture. I keep going back to nice pretty picture because people love pictures because it makes sense and it's usually a lot easier to kind of read. Okay, so your software developers is the next set of individuals from a working standpoint, right? So these are the group that, most people like think they work in silos. They don't necessarily need to be able, to work within or work with other teams because they can do whatever that they want, and that's not true. So software developers need assistance to be able to see if their code is working, where it's breaking at, and where the issues are, and where users are having issues with their code. So from a front-end perspective, let's say they built an app that has a GUI, that's GUI based, and they're supposed to do certain things on the app on the front end. So users click a button, and that button, gives them some like big red X, right? So that big red X is what you see on the front end, gives you some sort of code on the back end. Hopefully, the way that it's been coded, it gives you some sort of code on the back end that says, hey, I can't access this resource, or this resource isn't available temporarily, or I can't process this, whatever it is. All of those things are logged somewhere. And instead of the developer now having to retry that exact same error and then basically try to impersonate what that user is doing, they can literally go to Splunk and say, hey, this is that error that we saw. Let me get an alert on it. So I don't now need to go code that and or at least retry what that user did and replicate that same error. They can do the exact same thing from a Splunk standpoint, because Splunk is already seeing what that error is, and they say, hey, this is what it is. You go try this, and this is what you should see. So they're already getting that exact same output that they would probably have seen if they went and tried different things and just try to replicate what they're doing, versus Splunk telling them exactly what they should expect to see and where it breaks at. So Splunk gives you that nice little log that tells you what the issue is. From a backend perspective, same exact thing. If it's a backend database, whatever it is that's spitting out an error, whether it's sharding, whatever issues it's having with the application, Splunk can see that as well. It can say, hey, this thing is not able to replicate. This thing is having issues with being able to communicate with, the UI. There's another issue with port connectivity. There's firewalls, whatever it may be. You can see all of that from the logs itself, and Splunk can aggregate that and give you a nice little painted picture for that. From a product owner perspective, think about customer facing and customers having issues. So let's say Walmart, being the big giant corporation they are, is having issues with, let's say customers ordering a certain item. And of course, customers are sending either emails or creating tickets about, issues that they're not able to access certain things, in whether it's a managed CRM platform that it's offered through Walmart, or whether it's a shared CRM platform that's offered, or if it's some other service that you have product owners managing. Either way, you have something that is telling you there's a problem with whatever application or service that you're using. That something typically has logs. And if you have logs, Splunk can pick up those logs and it can tell you, hey, there's a problem over here somewhere. Let's figure out what that problem is and give a nice, pretty picture and dashboard. So from an alerting standpoint, Splunk can quickly shoot out an alert and say, hey, there's a problem here. But also from a dashboarding standpoint, you can also look at it from a trend analysis and say, hey, last year we had 6,000 errors with our different Walmart, customers or external customers. This year we only had, 2,500. So of course, you can look at that as progress, but then you can also look at what are the remaining 2,500, or are the new 25 or the new errors that we're having all new, the 2,500, or are some of them still part of the areas that the issues that we're having before with those number of errors that we had prior. So from a Splunk perspective, you can do trend analysis on that. Again, Splunk isn't the only solution that can do this, but it's the one that I'm most familiar with. And any other tools that's a logging tool, you can pretty much create rules and dashboards and different sort of correlation methods to be able to link that. Splunk does all that for you, wrapped up in a nice, pretty bow, as an application that you got to pay a little bit of money for. But at the end of the day, it can paint a nice little pretty picture for you. So, quick overview again. Connecting the dots is the theme. We have a list of different types of engineers that work within a company: your cybersecurity, network, IAM, software developers, and your product owners. These folks have a bunch of different tools that they work with. And these bunch of different tools and appliances also have logs that tell if there's issues or if things are going right. What you want to do is send all that information to Splunk. And then what Splunk would do is paint a nice little pretty picture that says, hey, something is wrong or something is right. At the end of the day, you can either look at this from a troubleshooting perspective to say, all right, let's fix this, or things are going really well. Let's send this now off to our customers and say, hey, over the last year, you've been having 100% success rate accessing all the things that you're supposed to access from Walmart.com. Or you've been having 96% success rate. The other 4%, we know exactly what the issues are. We've triangulated to that, and we're building solutions around that to be able to solve those issues.
Hey, what up, fam? This is Sar Levy, host of Africans in Tech, where we're building bridges and shaping bridges in tech. Just a quick reminder for those who've not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. You can catch all of our content, including our whiteboard sessions, where you'll find our full-length videos on our channel. And hit that notification bell, fam. All right?